Hi everyone, it's Jaymie here. I'm a soulful intuitive coach and healer. Today I want to talk to you guys about how important it is to be mindful of the labels that we put on things, because there are just certain things that I feel there are disempowering labels that are put on things, and rather than focusing on that, I think it's so important to start identifying ways that things are actually working for you. For every energy, there's an opposing energy. So whenever there's something that appears to be negative, there's actually a shadow part. There's something that's really powerful. And there are so many things where I find that people are getting stuck in a label that doesn't necessarily pertain to them. And so I want to offer this refreshing perspective for some of the more common labels that are given in a disempowering way and share with you why they show up. Because here's the thing, we've been given all the tools that we need to succeed, and life is happening for us. So that means that the things that are showing up aren't necessarily this disempowering thing on the surface. One of the things that I've noticed is that there are multiple truths. So there are things that I truly believe in, undoubtedly, in my life, but I hear someone else say the exact opposite of my message, and I can feel the undeniable truth for other people. And so I'm here to share with you some of my perspective on a lot of the common disempowering things, like procrastination being a negative quality, being unproductive, being the source of failure and the disruptor of success. I want to talk about laziness, what it actually means, some of the benefits behind that. That'll probably be something I'll talk about tomorrow, along with being disorganized. So today I want to focus on procrastinating. Right now, before I get started, I do want to clarify that there are empowering and disempowering elements of procrastinating. So you have to decide for yourself where you fall into this scale to determine how aligned my message is for you. Because there are definitely people who procrastinate in an incredibly unproductive way, where if you're sitting on your ass, you're doing absolutely nothing, you're making these excuses that validate why you're not taking the necessary steps to get into the space that you truly desire. That can be toxic to your success. That can be poison to your soul. But I'm talking about the procrastinators who are brilliant. I've seen this so often in my clients where they're just so amazing and they're entrepreneurs at heart, and they're nonconformists, but there's this label that being a procrastinator is negative. So there's this story that they say saying, I'm not good enough because I'm a procrastinator. So this is who I'm speaking my message to. Okay, if you take longer to get started, but you end up getting the results that you set out to do, then, it's important to release yourself, because when you're criticizing yourself or you're rejecting aspects of yourself, you're not able to see the true success and the progress that you're making, and you're blinding yourself, and it doesn't serve you. The thing is, a lot of entrepreneurs are nonconformists. You're right-brained thinkers. You're more creative. And the more creative you are, the more wildly different you are, actually the more successful of an entrepreneur you're going to become, because not a lot of people are saying things that you're saying, doing the things that you're doing, and that makes you valuable. Now, I don't personally believe that there's really a competition, because I believe that we each have our own way of expressing things, even if it's recycled information. But the more of a nonconformist you are, the more likely that the greater success you have to becoming an amazingly successful entrepreneur. There's a greater correlation that you're going to procrastinate. And that's actually what makes you a successful entrepreneur, because that's how you stimulate your mind, and that's how you come up with creative solutions. As a nonconformist, you're naturally an experimenter. If you're an entrepreneur, you're a nonconformist. So what's happening is that it's the way that you are actually processing information. A lot of the productive people that you see that are getting results done, that are goal-oriented, without really having to put in a lot of work. And when I say putting in a lot of work, I mean, there are certain people that just thrive in a condition of procrastinating, but they don't give themselves credit for the results, because they're like, well, the way to being successful is to be productive from the beginning. But here's the thing that I want to share with you guys. Productive people who are linear, goal-oriented, who have a strong sense of time, strong sense of direction, are able to dish things out in a timely manner and stay focused because the part of the brain that stimulates productivity is already highly potent. So a lot of right-brained creative thinkers who come up with a lot of amazing ideas, you need that productivity chemical in order to execute things. And procrastinating is actually the process that your body is going through in order to generate the chemicals that it needs in order to actually produce your desired results. It's an extra step you have to take that a lot of other left brain thinkers don't have to take because they're already producing it. So procrastination isn't necessarily a negative thing. Hi, Mandy. It's actually something that is taking place to prepare you. So rather than seeing procrastinating as this negative thing, I want you to see it as you're preparing, as you're brainstorming. Because as a nonconformist, you're an experimenter. You have so many different ideas. You're brainstorming so many different things. And the minute a thought comes up, the way that you want to execute it, you're generally coming up with something that makes sense on a conscious level. But the magic is in your subconscious and unconscious mind. And it takes a while for that idea to brew. So sometimes when you actually allow yourself to procrastinate, you are literally incubating your ideas, you're refining it, you're marinating in it, you're brainstorming in it, you're creating this clarity so that you actually make it more aligned with what you truly want to do, not necessarily your first unfiltered idea that isn't necessarily the most favorable. And so it's really important to identify, are you actually a procrastinator in a disempowering way, or are you just adopting this negative label that doesn't actually pertain to you? You know, if you give yourself a week or two to get something done and you do it maybe a week later, 3 days later, 3 days before it's due, or whatever it is, but you end up with an amazing result, why are you going to necessarily describe yourself as a procrastinator in a negative way? You actually got more done in a shorter amount of time. That's practicing minimum effort, maximum results. Procrastination is the necessary process for nonconformist spiritual entrepreneurs to actually get focused, because it is literally your body physiologically preparing you to get productive, to get the results that you truly desire. And so this is just something that I really want to remind you all of, because there are so many amazing entrepreneurs who don't feel worthy or who don't see the success because there's this label that they're adopting. And the thing is, for every energy, there's an opposing energy. There is a positive to everything. But here's the thing, okay? And this is why I'm not a huge fan of labels. Because when you put labels, you start to have these conditions and you start saying, this is good, this is bad, you know, and then you start to reject the things that are bad and you start to gravitate towards the things that are good, positive, empowering. And they can be all of those things, but when it's out of alignment, when it's not in balance, it's even our positive, empowering things don't actually serve us. Someone who's extremely happy, that's mania. You know, that's a chemical imbalance in the brain just as much as depression, sadness, and negativity. So it's all about being in alignment. If you are constantly happy to the point that you're not allowing yourself to experience the contrast, you're not fully experiencing life. You're not giving yourself an opportunity to learn and grow because you're in a state of denial and you're filtering things in a way that isn't necessarily true and honest and authentic. So it's really about seeing yourself for who you are without including the labels. Labels are great to give you that clarifying idea, but don't let anyone, me or anyone else, tell you the meaning behind something. I want you to explore for yourself what it means for you and identify how it's serving you, because everything is serving you. There are times that I've procrastinated and it wasn't good for me. But because it wasn't good for me, it literally made me so disgusted with myself that I literally just accelerated my success, which if I had just taken baby steps a little bit every day, I would have had this sense of accomplishment. I would have settled. I wouldn't have necessarily developed that deeper ambition and that drive that really propelled me forward. And as a former personal organizer, I've noticed this a lot, where there's this idea of this traditional version of what it means to be organized. And a lot of creative people create a seemingly unproductive space that can arguably be stated as promoting procrastination. But that's actually a highly stimulating, encouraging environment that produces your desired results. I had a client who was a designer. She designs clothes. So on the opposite side of her room was her sewing machine, and on the other side was her fabric where the closet was. Right? Now, most personal organizers would have put everything right next to each other, but everyone has an organizational skeletal structure, and it's better to work with yourself rather than against yourself. And when you make more movements, you make more connections between your left and right brain hemisphere, and that actually also shortens the procrastination time. This is why if you're a chronic procrastinator, you're creative by nature, exercising, moving around, fitness is great because it's another avenue for your body to produce that productivity chemical that it needs. And so creating a space that supported that zigzag action not only allowed her to work with herself, but it also created an opportunity for her creativity to just burst out a lot more. Whereas if things were right next to each other, she wouldn't have gotten that same kind of inspiration. That movement was necessary for her it was part of her process. And I was able to see it in others, and that's how I was able to see it within myself. I have my L-shaped office space area in the middle of my studio, but my filing folders with all of my finances is on the other side of the room. And I actually have a drawer where I can put all of my file stuff, but I don't put that in there. And there's something about when I walk over to the further area, there's open space on the ground. I get to roll around more. I mean, there have been times I've worked on my finances where I put my feet up on the wall, and I feel freer. My desk space is more focused, and that's great. But because I need more of that like movement energy when I'm doing math and stuff like that, it actually is more productive for me. If all of my finance stuff was physically close to me, just because it's close to me doesn't mean that I'm going to utilize it. It's actually going to discourage me from utilizing it even more because it triggers unpleasant energy for me. So the biggest thing is to identify why you're procrastinating rather than automatically assuming that it's bad. I see this so often where people are like, it's you're attracting failure. It's an excuse. You're avoiding what you're meant to do in life. And when you put that label, then you're going to try to push through and resist procrastination, and that actually can waste a lot of time. There are times that I've put things out because I was like, this is such a great idea, I want to launch it. And then a couple weeks in, I was like, oh, actually, I probably should have done it like this. This would have been better. If I had sat on procrastinating on it a little bit longer, I would have refined it into something that's more in alignment for myself and for my meant-to-be clients. So if you are procrastinating and it's taking you longer to get started, but you're still getting the results that you need, I want to invite you to reconsider and not feel so shitty about yourself because your process is different than other people. You're not a robot. You're not a carbon copy of other people. There are multiple avenues to achieve success, and the best way for you to achieve it is to follow the path that's most natural to you and flow into that. Now, obviously, that isn't to say you shouldn't make adjustments, but I just really wanted to share with you guys the benefits of of procrastinating, because otherwise, you may try to suppress that, and that's actually ultimately unproductive. Everyone's process is different. So one of the things that I invite you to really explore is ask yourself, how do you procrastinate? In what ways does procrastination show up for you? How has it benefited you? And when I say how does it procrastinate, do you tend to procrastinate 3 days before? For me, I used to procrastinate in increments of 3 days, or I would be really productive for 3 days and then I'd stop. And I realized that it's because 3 is my magical number. I'm at my most productive when I'm working on 3 different things at the same time, because I need that highly stimulating contrasting environment. And like one of my former business coaches described my mind as an amusement park. So I thrive in that environment, you know? And so the way that your procrastination shows up is your creative mind trying to communicate a message to you about what your process is. Start to understand what that is. You know, maybe it's something that keeps showing up at a certain timeline because there's a block that has to be cleared. Maybe it's maybe it's a hindering belief that like you learned from a parent at an earlier age, and it keeps showing up, or you get a block at a specific point in your life, and as you're executing your goals, as an invitation to say, hey, look right here. And it's so important to move through that, you know? And so instead of saying, oh my God, this is an issue, it's like, think of it as a treasure hunt, you know, and see what's there. Be curious, you know, be an investigator and really tune into what is actually going on right now. Because you'll start to realize that as you're procrastinating, there's a reason why you're doing it in that way, and you can leverage that and balance it out in a way that's going to be the most advantageous for you. I tend to when I used to procrastinate, I did this a lot more when I was younger. But one of my favorite ways of procrastinating was cleaning. And I learned that cleaning is my active form of meditation. I've since then replaced that with cooking. Particularly, I like to prep because I was born left-handed, and I feel like it's my opportunity to kind of like use my left hand, and that makes me feel balanced. And so for me, it was just an opportunity. Like because I knew I was a procrastinator, I would turn it into something productive. Like, I don't want to work on this assignment right now. I did this a lot in school, so I'm like, okay, so I'm going to clean. Now I don't want to work on my finances, so now I'm going to work on my assignment. And so you can literally just recirculate things, and procrastination was basically a sign for me that I'm bored. And I'm like, what can I do to make this interesting, to make this fun? You know, sometimes you procrastinate because it's a message from your soul saying, you know what, it's not ready yet. And you don't have to rush the process. Sometimes procrastination shows up, particularly for action-oriented heavy people, because it's telling you to slow down. But my body was so aggressive with its procrastination, and it just went against just my desire to constantly be active that I didn't understand it. And it wasn't until I balanced my feminine and masculine energy so that I wasn't constantly doing, and I was receiving as well, that my procrastination started to subside. So sometimes it's just a scale of telling you where you are in your energetic alignment. So get clear on what that is. What does procrastination mean to you? What is the message? How does procrastination show up? How has it served you? What is your procrastinating pattern? What are the results that you get? You know, don't automatically assume that because it takes you longer that you're unproductive, that it's negative. I don't see it as, you know, you took a long time to get started. I see it as it takes you less time to complete your goals. That you go through and you get to accelerate through your projects. And isn't that a more empowering way to look at it? Rather than saying, I get to start late, you know, I start later because I procrastinate, I'm lazy. You can say, it takes me less time to finish my projects. I accelerate through my projects in a shorter amount of time than most people. And, you know, you can focus on doing the other things that you love to do. Sometimes procrastination shows up because you're in such a work mode and you're not balancing out the fun, the play aspect that's necessary. I know that when I don't give myself permission to have fun, I notoriously procrastinate. And all it really takes is like a 20-minute bath or watching a 2-hour movie, and that saves me from like a week and a half or 2 weeks of sitting on my ass doing nothing. You know, so it's about decoding the message, because procrastinating isn't a disempowering label. It's not a problem. It's a message with information that you are meant to extract. So decipher what that is. Take this time, especially during Mercury retrograde, which is an amazing time to look inward. These questions are going to naturally surface faster. Let me know how you feel, what your thoughts are. If you have any questions, feel free to comment. And Tomorrow, I think I'm going to jump on here and talk about um, laziness and the other side of it, the energetic harmony, balancing, and things of that nature. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. Bye!